Aloha, I'm Lyla Berg. Mahalo for tuning in to Island Focus. We're here in Studio 1122 at Ōlelo Community Media to converse with leaders in our community about how their organizations are maintaining the fundamental American right to the freedom of speech. Thank you for joining us on Island Focus. I'm always so impressed when I learn more about the services of Ōlelo.
So yeah, we like to engage with the community as much as possible. We offer all these easy access services to Kapuna, to Keiki, and everyone in between. But I really want to emphasize our youth programs because those are super awesome. We offer Youth Capital Commentary, where we invite students from all over the state to the state capitol on opening day, where they can interview all of their lawmakers in front of the camera, and it's so great.
It must be really exciting to hear young people actually tell adults what they think.
Yes, and speaking of that, our Youth Exchange Student Video Competition, which is the largest in the state, does just that. It invites students to create video content, submit it to air on our channels, and as part of the video contest, covering topics like bullying, environmental, health,
Peace, creating
Yes.
peace. My Rotary Club of Honolulu has been your sponsor for 17 years.
Yes, thank you so much for that. We appreciate all of the support we've been getting for Youth Exchange throughout all of these years.
So you have these youth programs, and there's more that you offer as well.
Yes, we also cater to our government sector. We offer a program called Vote, which is every election year, we invite candidates running for office to come to our studio to record a short message to their constituents, to their voters, and basically kind of level the playing field a bit.
Well, and in as much as this program is dedicated to free speech, the whole notion of voting in a representative democracy is about free speech.
Absolutely, and coincidentally, we are celebrating National Free Speech this week. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you for sharing. So great to see you again, Josh, after all these years and all your many different career placements.
It's really nice to spend some time with you again, Lyla. It's been too long.
So with ACLU, help us understand the organization and especially its role in free speech in Hawaii.
No, absolutely. So the ACLU nationally has been around for just over 100 years. Locally, we've been around since 1965. And the purpose of the ACLU, put simply, is to protect everybody's rights under the laws and the Constitution. And so in Hawaii, that's protecting all of our rights under the laws and Constitution of the United States and of Hawaii. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan government watchdog, which also means that we don't accept any government funding, which is really important considering that often government isn't particularly happy about what we're doing and what we're pointing out. And when you take a look at the ACLU nationally, one of the things that I think is interesting is all of the things that the organization's been involved in over the years that a lot of people don't know, and I think a lot of things that people might take for granted. And so, for instance, starting right off the bat with free speech, one of the things that I think is interesting is the Supreme Court of the United States hadn't even really heard any free speech cases until about the 1920s.
Wow.
And when you take a look at things that were happening leading into World War I, people who were protesting the war and making really mild statements about it, people who were just suggesting we shouldn't be involved in it, were getting arrested, prosecuted, and imprisoned. People like Upton Sinclair, the author, in I think 1923, was arrested for reading, I believe, the Bill of Rights at a union rally. And it was around that same time, in the 1920s, that the then Attorney General of the United States, Attorney General Palmer, started finding people that he personally deemed to be radicals and just deporting them.
It's the judiciary branch that decides on whether something is free speech or not?
Ultimately, it goes to the courts, and even in those days, in the 1920s, they were making some decisions that I think we look back on historically and think were wrong. But one of the challenges, and I think this is the reason why there's an importance for an organization like the ACLU, is when you take a look at the actions of the then Attorney General, it just underscores we can't just trust what government is doing. And it was actually that which had kicked off the formation of the ACLU, the so-called Palmer raids, as he was arresting these people and just booting them out of the country.
Now, when we hear those stories, they're national stories, right? And they seem like they're so far away, not only historically and time-wise, but also from our islands.
Right.
ACLU has a significant role in our islands.
A huge role in the islands. And we've been very busy since 1965 working right here, working on any number of issues, everything from the rights of people who are incarcerated. This is something that we've been working on since the formation of the local ACLU. There were cases that we had against the Hawaii Youth Correctional Facility because people who were incarcerated in the LGBT community were being persecuted because of who they were. There were successful cases that we had against the local Department of Public Safety because of just awful conditions inside jails and prisons. And that work, for instance, continues today.
And also in the community.
Community, let me focus in on that word for a second, Lyla, because I think that's a critical piece, is because the work we're doing always involves our community members. So when you're talking, for instance, about the houseless situation, people who are living unsheltered in Hawaii are part of our community. These are people's friends and family. These are people who go to work here in Hawaii, whose kids go to school here in Hawaii. And I think a lot of people sometimes don't necessarily realize that. I've personally spoken to people who are living on the beach, who work in Home Depot, whose kids go to local schools, and then they come back to where they're living at the end of the day.
So how does someone or an organization or a group of people, how do they come to the ACLU and ask for help?
It happens in a number of ways. Sometimes it's quite literal, that people will just come to us and contact the office and say, I think my rights were violated. Can you help? Sometimes people will see something else we've done and say, I think that might have happened to me too. And sometimes, also speaking of free speech, it's because of things that we see that are being reported locally. We currently, for instance, have a pending case against the Department of Education for violations of Title IX. It's a case we filed a couple of years ago because we found out through reporting by Civil Beat that out on the west side of the island, there are some schools that had athletic locker facilities for male athletes, but not for female athletes. So, for instance, the male athletes had these great facilities, and the female athletes, during training, if they needed to use the restroom, had to run a mile down the road to go to Burger King.
When we talk about ACLU in particular, just based on what you said, it does take a village.
Oh, it absolutely does.
What is the message you have for the community?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. One is people always really do have to stay vigilant and remember that you do have a voice and you have a right to use it. One of the ways that it was used in truly powerful fashion was just last year when about 10,000 people marched on the state capitol calling out for racial justice. And that was something that was really spearheaded by some student activists who are part of the Black Lives Matter movement.
So that's a great punctuation mark for our conversation and encouraging youth to participate as well and speak up.
Please.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Lyla.
You've just had the opportunity to meet Josh Wisch, who's the Executive Director for ACLU Hawaii. So we're in front of the Ōlelo building, but it's more than a building.
It is more than a building. We are a public access station, and we serve the island of Oʻahu, both all of the residents, the government, the educational institutions, as well as the public. We give the opportunity to our community to come in and share their videos and tell their story. We empower our community voices. And we also provide training opportunities. So once they come in and get trained, we teach them how to produce, how to video, and how to edit. And once they're done with that, then they get to use our facilities and our equipment for no charge.
Well, how exciting that they learn to be part of their own process.
Yes, it really is. And at Ōlelo, we just thrive on free speech, and we give the opportunity to everyone to use this platform that we have here to exercise their free speech rights.
Well, and one of the things that I appreciate is that the youth are involved as well,
Yes.
and invited to be part of speaking out.
We enjoy working with the youth, and we love watching them thrive and just understanding why free speech is so important.
So with all of the different platforms and applications and everything that you have in terms of distribution, the world can hear the voices of Hawaiʻi.
Yes, the world can definitely hear our voices, and that we want to ensure that they know how important their voices are, and that free speech is welcomed here at Ōlelo.
And for you, the most rewarding part of your job?
The most rewarding part of my job is to work with everyone in our community, to inspire them to just tell their stories so that people know what's going on.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So good to see you in person, Sandy, especially at this time when we're talking about freedoms. Please share with us about Common Cause and the vision, the mission, and how can we best support what you do toward freedom of speech?
Thank you, Lyla, for having me and Common Cause Hawaiʻi here with you. So Common Cause is a national, nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. We support American democracy, and what that really means is we hold power accountable. We hold our government accountable. We hold our elected officials accountable, and we cannot do that unless the public speaks up, and that means through speech, through action, which is also speech. And so we are really excited to be here with you today to talk about free speech. Through Common Cause, provide resources to people to become engaged in government, to know how to become engaged in government by voting, by participating in government, by testifying at the legislature, by testifying at the county councils, by participating in boards and commissions. So that is how people exercise their free speech. It's not just through voting. Voting is just one way, but actually being active citizens, engaged citizens. That is how people are responsible citizens in their community.
But how would they learn how to participate?
You could contact Common Cause, and we could tell you about all these different great opportunities for engagement, because it's just never ending how to participate in government. But it starts at home. You know, I learned how to become engaged by going to the polls and voting with my parents. I learned in schools the importance of civic education and civic engagement, presenting in class about important issues in government, and learning through school, learning at home, and just finding an issue you truly care about, researching that issue, whether it's climate change, affordable housing, a living wage, and then reaching out to different organizations and groups and finding out about how you can make a difference. It's not just, you know, thinking about it and then worrying about it and saying, oh, I can't do anything. It's really making a difference, because you can make a difference. One person can make a difference. Speak up. You could testify at the legislature. You could testify before boards and commissions. You could testify before county councils. And I know people often are uncomfortable doing it the very first time, but it's actually quite simple.
Does Common Cause help guide the learning of that?
Oh, yes, definitely. We will be happy to provide talking points on certain issues. Everyone has an equal voice. It's not just the big money interests. We'll be happy to provide information on how you can actually get involved, when hearings are, what time, how to sign up. Yes, we do all of that.
Well, and what I hear you also saying is that we should talk with each other about what bothers us, what troubles us, our perspectives about certain issues. Years ago with the kids voting program, our little ones were asked, even elementary school, were asked about their concerns of what's happening in their community on every island. How might one approach that conversation with a friend even?
We all gravitate towards people we have common interests with, and I think we should never be afraid to voice our concerns. It's civics and it's civil civics is how I see it, how I approach matters. Because we all live here together, not just here on the islands, but here in this country and here in this world.
Well, and it seems fairly logical in Hawaii because aloha spirit, right?
Exactly.
Working together is so much a part of how many of us grew up. And so as we wrap up our conversation for today, what message might you give to the audience to encourage and motivate them to pay attention?
Please be engaged. Do not let this wonderful Constitution, First Amendment opportunity go to waste. Use it. Make your concerns heard. Don't think that you don't have an opportunity to make a difference and make a change, because you do, because that is what the First Amendment is about.
And what I get when you're saying this, as you're smiling and enthusiastic, is that it doesn't have to be painful.
No.
In fact, as we speak up, the passion of our truth actually can be energized.
You know, we're speaking to our neighbors, we're speaking to our family members, you know, we're speaking to each other, and it is wonderful how many people you find will support you and your message and your mission. So it is great.
Thank you very much for sharing your energy and also your knowledge and information and inspiring us to pay attention.
Well, thank you for having Common Cause.
We've just spoken with Sandy Ma, Executive Director of Common Cause. What a vibrant, colorful room this is. This is the training room.
Yes, it's the training room, and people in the community come to this room to learn about video production, Lyla. And what's really great about it is that when they learn video production, they not only get to create their own videos, but we mentor them on other productions that we do here for the community. So for example, some of our services cover creating public service announcements for nonprofit organizations. We also cover community events, meetings, conferences. All of those events are produced by Ōlelo, but we also have trainees that come through here to help us get the community's messages out there.
So when we speak of voice in the various different formats, it really is the essential part of Ōlelo.
Yes, it is. And what's really hard about production is that it's a lot of work. But when you have more people coming together to do it, then it just becomes more fun. We do have things called signature programs, shows that Ōlelo produces, such as Mele A'e and Island Focus, and so many other really cool programs that show off the different voices that are in the community that need to kind of have some assistance to come together and be shared out in a format that people like to watch.
Well, and what I appreciate about the vibrancy of this room is it really speaks of the freedom that Ōlelo offers its clients and also in the production services.
Yeah, when you look at these walls and you see all these colored blocks, in actuality, the 808 Urban group that painted these walls were talking about the representation of all of these colors being the representation of the variety of voices that are out in our community. And what's so awesome about Ōlelo is that we get a chance to help community members share that with their neighbors so that we can kind of have a window into everybody's world and become better neighbors for it.
And enable the community to be more vibrant.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Appreciate you being with us today, Chad, and as a busy man devoted to freedom of speech, perhaps you can share from the perspective of Civil Beat, what does it mean to us in Hawaii and how do we maintain it?
You know, a lot of people, Lyla, tend to forget there's actually a Hawaii Constitution. It is secondary to the federal Constitution, but it's not word for word either. And some parts of the Bill of Rights are actually a little stronger than they are compared to the federal version, particularly when it comes to privacy. But when it comes to the First Amendment, there's a reason why freedom of the press, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, the right to petition government, freedom of religion are all contained, and why it's number one. And Civil Beat's mission, ever since it started in 2010, is to be a voice, to be a forum, to allow people to express themselves, to talk about the issues of the day, to not get out of hand when you're having those discussions, but to recognize that it really is a fundamental way to tackle the issues that we face, and there's so many these days, and hopefully come to some agreement and compromise on how to go forward. So that's why First Amendment rights, free speech is so important to civil beat.
How do you exercise that freedom?
Well, it's a day-to-day, sometimes hour by hour, sometimes minute by minute task, and we're always reevaluating what we're doing. Some of the principles that are most important to us, though, are transparency, that if you're paying for government, and we are with our tax dollars, that we, the public, have a right to know what it is our officials are doing. We recognize that there are limits, personnel issues, there are laws that are written to constrain the ability of the media, of the public to get information. But bottom line, it really is about accountability, which is another one of our watchwords. And that's why we also call ourselves a watchdog, so that we can look and see if there is an organization that is abusing a free speech right, or if in fact it is suppressing a free speech right. That is something that Civil Beat will pay close attention to because it's important for our coverage. But as I say, it's a day-to-day battle, and particularly in this day and age of disinformation and misinformation, and with the internet and social media, it's become more challenging than ever.
So when we talk about freedom of speech, there's also responsibilities, there's privileges, I mean, rights, definitely. How does that all play together?
It's a little frustrating. It's a lot frustrating. I'll use a different modifier. I'll give you an example. Civil Beat has a comment section at the end of all of our stories. Our opinion pieces, everything that we run, we allow people, ideally readers, to comment. But they also are allowed to do it anonymously. Didn't used to be that way at the beginning. We used to ask people, tell us who you are. Show us your avatar, right? We want to know who the real person is. But somewhere along the way, we let that go, and now people comment quite often anonymously. And sadly, what that has done for some people is given them a certain liberty to say whatever it is on their mind, no matter how hurtful it is, no matter how factually wrong, no matter how unproductive it is to the discussion, the article at hand. And that's something that I spend a great deal of my time moderating those comments, rejecting comments, banning people that submit comments that are unacceptable. It frustrates me because it's amazing just how mean some people can be.
In that anonymity.
Yes, and I wish in a way we would go back, but nearly everybody allows comments anonymously on just about any forum, and it's hard to control. We even have an algorithm that goes through and looks for speech like Hitler or Nazi or some profanity, but it's a constant battle, and particularly now during these difficult times, COVID, the stolen election, any of the number of things that we've encountered over the last 5 years, fake news has made it even more demanding and difficult.
And what is disturbing to me is the lack of aloha, or the absence, let's say, the absence of aloha in so many interactions. How do we not just return, but how do we evoke who we are again?
If I knew that, I could retire right now, Lyla, and just spend my day sitting on the beach, hanging out. But the word aloha has been misused by many of these organizations. The word pono, you'll see groups that purport to be about free speech, but in many ways, what these people want to do is they want to be about their free speech and not about yours. It's hard to do, but you really have to stop and listen to what they say, internalize their ideas, speak back to them, and to seek some sort of common ground. And it's been my experience, even interviewing people who have views and positions that are diametrically opposite of mine. Most people are just glad to talk and have that engagement and to feel respected and appreciated. Yes, there is that group that is militant and doesn't want to reach any agreement, but I do think it really takes some patience and some tolerance, and take a deep breath, slow down, don't reach for the fist, don't reach for the swear word, but stop and listen to what they're trying to say and see if you can find some common ground.
So is that the purpose of your Talk Story forums that you have and
We
in your
try.
law center?
Yeah, we do. And we have a number of forums that we do. Lately, it's all been on Zoom because of COVID. But we do believe very much in reaching out to the community. We don't want to simply be sitting behind our laptop or our phone. We feel that we need to be, not ho'oponopono exactly, but we do need to be engaged and talking with each other. And so that's why Civil Beat makes it a point to go out into the community, to hold talk story sessions, to hold civil cafes, to have a real extended free exchange of ideas.
And actually what you're talking about as we wrap up our conversation for today is ha'aha. It's the respect, I mean, ho'oponopono is huge.
Yes.
It's a process, but at least if we can be in ha'aha with each other.
I think so, and it's amazing. I mean, it's so cliche, but we are all under the same sun. We all breathe the same oxygen. We all face the same struggles on these planets together. So is there a way that we can stop, listen, breathe, and try and appreciate each other? I think that will solve most, perhaps not all, but most of our problems, and I would certainly endorse that approach.
Well, thank you for your time, and what a wonderful thought to leave for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Lyla.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Chad Blair of Civil Beat. So this is where the magic happens. The processing, the distribution. It must be really exciting for you in your role.
Yes. Ōlelo accepts and processes over 5,000 hours of original content, mainly submitted by Hawaii residents and other groups that are on Hawaii that covers events that are important to them.
And all original.
Yes, exactly.
And so when we look at something, it's not just on television or on the computer.
Correct. Not only do we process it for our 4 on-air channels, but we also process it for live streaming 24/7 on our website, which is also accessible on our mobile app, which you can also pull older videos as well.
So when we're talking about free speech, there is an enormous amount of freedom because the videos get shown around the world too.
Yes, it does. We also live stream lives on Facebook Live, also YouTube, and recently we've been experimenting with Twitch in order to reach our younger audience.
Well, I'm very proud to be part of ʻŌlelo, and I'm sure you are too. Thank you.
I am. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today on Island Focus. I'm Lyla Berg. On behalf of the Island Focus crew and the entire team at Ōlelo Community Media, aloha and malamapono. Be kind to one another and let us work together for a more peaceful, just, and civil society. See you soon.